What if everything we thought we knew about the birth of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's first child was a lie? Imagine this for a moment. The cameras flashing, the headlines screaming with joy, and the world celebrating the arrival of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Yet behind the palace gates, something darker, more theatrical, and more shocking was unfolding. Could it be true that Meghan never carried Archie? Could it be possible that the woman presented to the world as a glowing royal mother-to-be was instead concealing a secret so explosive it could rattle the very foundations of the monarchy? This is not just another royal rumor. This is the kind of story that lingers and whispers, that haunts headlines, that keeps resurfacing because the inconsistencies are just too glaring to ignore. And now, if Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, is revealing what she truly knows, the silence that once protected Meghan may finally be cracking. But before we get there, let's rewind to the beginning of this tale, a pregnancy that was celebrated worldwide, yet shadowed by suspicion almost from the very start. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Picture the autumn of 2018. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had just announced to the world, while on tour in Australia, that they were expecting their first child. The news was met with cheers, applause, and waves of admiration. Meghan glowed, or at least, that's what the cameras captured. The young couple seemed to be living a fairy tale, walking hand in hand, smiling broadly as they received baby gifts from eager well-wishers. But behind the smiles, sharp-eyed observers noticed something peculiar. Meghan's bump didn't behave like most baby bumps. Some days it looked round and prominent, the perfect glowing belly. Other days, it seemed to shrink or even shift in shape, almost as if it had a mind of its own. Did you ever notice that? Did you ever question how a pregnant belly could look so dramatically different from one appearance to the next? The whispers began quietly at first, an Instagram comment here, a blog post there. Moon bump, they called it. A prosthetic pregnancy belly. The kind used on movie sets, the kind Meghan would have been familiar with from her Hollywood days. At first, it sounded absurd, almost cruel. Who would dare accuse a duchess of faking a pregnancy? Yet, as the months went on, the whispers grew louder. People began sharing slow-motion videos of Meghan crouching down, her belly seeming to fold unnaturally, as if it were fabric and foam rather than flesh and life. Skeptics asked, was Meghan putting on a performance, not just for the cameras, but for the entire world? And this is where the story gets even more unsettling. You see, the British royal family thrives on image, on tradition, on presenting the illusion of perfection to the masses. Every royal birth has followed a ritual. Diana stepped outside St. Mary's Hospital with newborn William and Harry in her arms. Kate Middleton posed on those same steps with George, Charlotte, and Louis, smiling through exhaustion and reality. But when it came to Meghan and Harry, the rules changed. No hospital steps photo. No traditional unveiling. Instead, a carefully staged photo shoot days later, with Meghan in pristine white, cradling Archie in a blanket. Why break with such a long-standing tradition? Why avoid the cameras that usually captured the first moments of royal life? Some defenders say Meghan wanted privacy, that she wasn't interested in the stiff upper lip and staged smiles of royal mothers before her. And that sounds fair, until you remember that Meghan and Harry had signed on to a system built on public image. The public funds, the titles, the prestige, they all come with an unspoken agreement to play the part. So why refuse this particular script, unless, perhaps, the circumstances behind Archie's birth couldn't withstand the scrutiny? Unless there was something that needed hiding? And then comes the role of Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother. Quiet, composed, always in the background. During Meghan's pregnancy, she appeared rarely, but when she did, she radiated calm. She didn't speak out, didn't defend her daughter against the swirling rumors. Why not? Most mothers would leap to protect their child from such accusations. Could it be that Doria's silence wasn't about loyalty, but complicity? Could it be that she knew the truth of Archie's birth and chose to stay quiet? Think about it. If Meghan was indeed using a surrogate, Doria would be one of the very few trusted enough to know. A grandmother in waiting, yet kept at arm's length in the public eye. Doesn't it seem strange that Doria was present at Windsor when Archie was born, yet there are no public photos of her holding the baby in those first moments? Doesn't it strike you as odd that Meghan's closest family member seemed to fade conveniently into the background, as though she were hiding more than just her emotions. This story matters not just because it fuels curiosity and gossip. It matters because it strikes at the very heart of the monarchy itself. If Meghan faked her pregnancy, if Archie was born via surrogate, then questions about legitimacy, succession, and honesty come crashing down like a house of cards. Royal history has been shaped by births and bloodlines. Kings and queens have risen and fallen based on who was rightfully born into the line. And here we stand, in the 21st century, facing whispers that one of the most celebrated royal births of our time may have been staged. But perhaps the most chilling part of all is this. The palace never addressed the rumors directly. Not once. Not even to shut them down. Instead, they acted as if the whispers didn't exist, as if ignoring them would make them disappear. Yet here we are, years later, still talking about it, still replaying those videos, still scrutinizing those photos. If the palace truly had nothing to hide, wouldn't it have been easier to confront the speculation head-on? This isn't just about Meghan. This isn't just about Harry. This is about the credibility of the royal family, the legacy of Archie, and the role of truth in a world built on spectacle. Because when the truth is too explosive, silence becomes the loudest answer of all. And now, if Doria has indeed stepped forward with her own revelation, that silence has shattered. The carefully constructed facade may finally be crumbling, and the story hidden in the shadows may be about to burst into the light. But here's the question I want you to hold on to. If Meghan never carried Archie, who did? Who was the woman chosen to bring the royal baby into the world, hidden away from the cameras and the history books? And why was it so crucial to conceal her existence? Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. From the very beginning, Meghan Markle's pregnancy was sold to the world as the picture of modern fairy tale royalty. A glamorous American actress turned duchess, glowing beside her prince, promising a new chapter for the British monarchy. But behind the carefully staged photos, the designer maternity outfits, and the glowing headlines, cracks began to appear. Cracks that millions of people spotted, questioned, and never forgot. Let's start with the announcement itself. October 2018. Meghan and Harry were on their first royal tour as a married couple in Australia. The palace issued a press release in the early hours of the morning confirming the Duchess was expecting her first child. The timing was significant. It overshadowed Princess Eugenie's wedding, which had taken place just days before. A wedding meant to be about Eugenie and Jack was suddenly eclipsed by Harry and Meghan's news. Was that a coincidence? Or was it yet another move in a larger strategy to keep Meghan front and center, ensuring the cameras never drifted elsewhere? The press ate it up. Meghan was hailed as radiant. She received baby gifts from locals during the tour, placed her hands protectively over her belly, and smiled warmly for the cameras. But even then, even in those early days, some people noticed something strange. Meghan was barely a few months along, yet her bump looked unusually prominent for such an early stage. Was it the cut of her dress? Was it simply the natural variation of pregnancies? Or was it something else entirely? This is where the story begins to twist. Because as her pregnancy progressed, Meghan's bump didn't follow the natural progression most expectant mothers experience. Some days it looked enormous, rounded, as if she were 8 months along. Other days, it seemed smaller, almost flatter. Even more shocking, there were moments captured on camera where the bump seemed to shift unnaturally, even fold as Meghan bent down. Did you ever see those clips? Did you ever notice how the belly seemed to behave more like fabric than flesh? For many, that was the first red flag. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Suddenly, every public appearance became a point of scrutiny. Every photo was magnified, every angle dissected. People weren't just admiring the Duchess anymore. They were studying her, looking for clues. And with each appearance, the whispers of a moon bump grew louder. Now, let's pause for a moment. A prosthetic pregnancy belly isn't some outlandish concept pulled from thin air. In Hollywood, it's standard practice. Actresses wear them for roles, complete with realistic movements, weights, and even simulated kicks. Meghan, having worked as an actress for years, would have been well aware of their existence. Could it be that she used her Hollywood experience not just on screen, but on the global stage of the monarchy? As the months wore on, her wardrobe choices became equally suspicious. Sometimes she wore form-fitting dresses that displayed a perfect round belly. Other times, loose coats that seemed to conceal far more than necessary. Critics pointed out inconsistencies. Was she deliberately shaping the narrative? Was she trying to appear further along or less far along, depending on the occasion? Why would her bump seem ready for delivery in one appearance, then weeks away in the next? And then came one of the most notorious moments. Meghan bending down to greet a child, her belly visibly folding inwards under the fabric. The clip went viral. People around the world gasped. "That's not how a pregnant belly moves," they said. "That looks like a cushion." The defenders rushed to explain it away. Camera angles, bad lighting, awkward movements. But the damage was done. Once the seed of doubt was planted, it grew into something much larger. This is where we must ask ourselves, why would Meghan fake a pregnancy? What possible motive could she have? The answer, some suggest, lies in control. By presenting herself as the pregnant Duchess, Meghan commanded sympathy, attention, and power. A pregnancy is the ultimate distraction from criticism. It shields a woman from attacks, turns her into a figure of admiration, and gives her a unique status within the royal family. Could Meghan have realized this? Could she have decided that carrying a baby, whether biologically hers or not, was less important than appearing to do so in the public eye? Meanwhile, the palace seemed eager to play along. Harry beamed in public, fiercely protective of his wife. The royal press machine pumped out glowing stories. Yet something was off. Unlike previous royal pregnancies, there were no official medical bulletins. No regular updates from the Queen's gynecologist, as was customary. The details were unusually scarce. The palace's vagueness only added fuel to the fire. And think about this. When Princess Diana was pregnant, the whole world knew where and when she would give birth. When Kate Middleton was expecting, reporters camped outside St. Mary's Hospital for days in advance. But with Meghan? Nothing. Secrecy at every turn. Even the announcement of Archie's birth was cloaked in confusion. Was he born at Windsor? At Portland Hospital? The palace released conflicting details, leaving journalists scrambling. Why would the palace, which thrives on tradition and predictability, choose secrecy now? Unless, of course, there was something to hide. For months, Meghan played the part of the glowing, expectant mother, cradling her belly at every appearance, sometimes even when it seemed unnecessary. Critics accused her of overacting, of turning motherhood into a performance. But was it a performance? Was it an effort to remind the cameras where to focus, to keep the illusion alive no matter what? And then, finally, came the day of Archie's arrival. Or at least, the day the palace told us he arrived. But even then, something was off. There was no photo outside the hospital. No exhausted but proud mother showing her child to the world. Instead, days later, there was a staged photo shoot inside Windsor Castle. Meghan, pristine in white, Harry at her side, Doria standing quietly in the background. Smiles all around, but no raw reality. No proof of the moment of birth. It was unprecedented. It broke decades of tradition. And it left millions with one burning question. What was Meghan hiding? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. From the moment that pregnancy was announced to the carefully controlled reveal of Archie, nothing followed the script of royal motherhood. And when something doesn't follow the script in a family that thrives on ritual, the world takes notice. But if Meghan never carried Archie, who did? Who was the surrogate? Where was she? And why has she never been seen or acknowledged? That is the question at the heart of this mystery. And the answer, when it finally comes, could unravel everything we thought we knew about Meghan, Harry, and the future of the monarchy. Because the story of that pregnancy wasn't just unusual. It may have been the perfect illusion. And the shocking part? This was only the beginning. Because the prosthetic bump allegations were about to explode, and the world would never look at Meghan the same way again. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. A royal pregnancy should have been a moment of joy, a beacon of hope, a celebration that united the monarchy with the people. But with Meghan Markle, instead of unity, there was confusion. Instead of joy, there was doubt. And instead of tradition, there was secrecy. At the center of it all, one shocking allegation that refuses to die. Meghan didn't carry Archie. She faked her pregnancy with a prosthetic bump. Let's go back to the heart of the controversy, the bump itself. From the moment Meghan began appearing in public as an expectant mother, Her belly became the most scrutinized part of her body. Every angle, every movement, every outfit was dissected, and it wasn't long before people began to notice strange inconsistencies. One day the bump was small, almost flat. The next, it looked huge, as though she were ready to deliver. Some days it was perfectly round, sitting high. Other days it drooped lower, looking oddly deflated. For a natural pregnancy, that kind of rapid fluctuation was baffling. But for a prosthetic? Completely explainable. The most infamous moment happened during Meghan's visit to a community center. She crouched down to greet a child. Cameras flashed, and as she bent, her belly appeared to fold in on itself. To many, it looked like fabric collapsing, not a living, growing pregnancy. That clip spread like wildfire. Blogs, YouTube channels, and tabloids replayed it in slow motion. Moon bump, they called it, a prosthetic pregnancy belly designed to mimic the look of pregnancy. Suddenly, the whispers became accusations. She's faking it. And here's where it gets interesting. Prosthetic bumps aren't just Hollywood fantasy props. They're incredibly realistic. Silicone bellies, weighted to simulate the feel of pregnancy. Some even have mechanisms to mimic kicking. Meghan, a former actress, would know exactly how convincing they can be. In fact, many speculated she might have had access to the very best models, the kind you wouldn't find in a costume shop, but custom designed for screen or stage. If anyone could pull off such a deception, it would be her. Now, defenders quickly dismissed the folding bump incident. They said it was a trick of the light, a camera illusion, or simply the natural movement of fabric. But the problem was that it wasn't a one-off. Time and time again, Meghan's belly behaved strangely. Photos from one day didn't match those from the next. Dresses clung in odd ways. Coats seemed strategically chosen, not to flatter, but to disguise. Did you notice how often Meghan wore oversized outerwear, even indoors? Was that style, or was it concealment? Consider this. When Kate Middleton was pregnant, her bumps progressed predictably. A small swell, a growing curve, a heavy third trimester. The public saw the progression step by step. With Meghan, it felt like her pregnancy jumped around in fast forward and rewind. At one appearance, she looked 8 months along. A week later, 6 months. A month after that, 9 months. It was inconsistent to the point of absurdity. And that inconsistency became the fuel for one of the most persistent royal controversies of modern times. But why would Meghan do it? Why would she stage something as monumental as a pregnancy? The theory goes deeper than vanity or attention. Some argue Meghan and Harry wanted total control over Archie's birth narrative. By faking the pregnancy, Meghan could avoid the public scrutiny of labor, the questions about hospitals, and even the medical oversight traditionally required by the monarchy. In other words, a prosthetic bump gave them freedom, the power to craft their own version of events without interference. And it worked, at least at first. Meghan received glowing press coverage. Photos of her cradling her belly were splashed across magazines. She was hailed as radiant, modern, groundbreaking, the Duchess who brought Hollywood glamour into royal motherhood. But the very thing that gave her power became the weapon her critics used to attack her. Each public appearance was another chance for the world to spot a slip, a fold, or a strange angle. And each one deepened the suspicion that Meghan wasn't carrying the child herself. Let's not forget, Meghan had spent years in front of cameras. She understood lighting, framing, wardrobe. She knew how to draw attention where she wanted it and deflect it where she didn't. Was this pregnancy just another performance? A scripted role where the costume wasn't a dress or a tiara, but a silicone belly strapped beneath her clothes? And here's a detail that can't be ignored. Meghan's obsessive habit of holding her belly. Far more than Diana. Far more than Kate. At nearly every event, Meghan placed her hands protectively over her bump. To some, it seemed maternal. To others, it seemed like overcompensation. Was she constantly reminding the cameras where to look? Or was she steadying a prosthetic, making sure it didn't slip, shift, or reveal the truth beneath? Critics asked, why so much emphasis? Why so much performance? And defenders had no clear answer. They could dismiss one video, one photo, one rumor. But the collective weight of all those strange moments was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the palace stayed silent. Not a word about the prosthetic allegations. Not even a denial. The very institution that micromanages image and tradition seemed unwilling or unable to address the growing speculation. Was their silence a refusal to dignify conspiracy theories? Or was it something more dangerous, an attempt to bury the truth? And then came the most telling moment of all, the birth itself. Or rather, the absence of it. No photos of Meghan leaving the hospital. No exhausted mother holding her newborn. No proud father waving to the crowd. Nothing. Just a carefully staged photo op days later, inside Windsor Castle. Meghan, flawless. Harry, glowing. Doria, silent. Archie, swaddled tightly in a blanket. To critics, this wasn't the reveal of a newborn, it was a cover-up. Because if Meghan had worn a prosthetic for months, then where was the real birth happening? Who was the woman carrying Archie? And why was she hidden from the world? The prosthetic bump theory wasn't just about Meghan's belly. It was about power, secrecy, and control. It was about rewriting tradition, defying the monarchy's rules, and daring the world to question what they were seeing with their own eyes. But if Meghan truly faked her pregnancy, there's one person who would know better than anyone else. One person who was there behind the scenes. One person who kept quiet through it all, until now. Her mother, Doria Ragland. And when she finally opened her mouth, the secret she revealed about that bump, that pregnancy, and that baby was more shocking than anyone imagined. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Why did Doria Ragland, Meghan Markle's mother, remain so eerily quiet during her daughter's pregnancy? Think about it for a moment. Most mothers are eager to share their joy. They gush, they defend, they celebrate openly. Yet during the most scrutinized pregnancy in recent royal history, Doria's presence was almost ghost-like. She was there, yes, but silent, careful, and watching. From the very beginning, Doria's role in Meghan's life has been unusual. Meghan grew up largely under her mother's guidance after her parents split, and the two developed a bond that seemed unbreakable. But when Meghan married into the royal family, Doria didn't step into the limelight like many expected. Instead, she stayed on the fringes, calm, dignified, but always quiet. This quietness was never more striking than during Meghan's pregnancy with Archie. Now, let's recall the timeline. Meghan announces her pregnancy in October 2018. Immediately, the world's eyes are locked onto the Duchess. Every move is tracked, every appearance analyzed. Every headline screams about the glowing new royal mother-to-be. Yet in all of this, where was Doria? No interviews, no public comments, no social media posts defending her daughter against the mounting conspiracy theories. Nothing. Doesn't that strike you as odd? If strangers on the internet were accusing your daughter of faking her pregnancy, wouldn't you rush to her defense? Wouldn't you want to shout the truth from the rooftops? But Doria didn't. She remained composed, silent, unyielding. And silence, as we know, often speaks louder than words. When Doria did appear, it was always in controlled, calculated settings. Remember the staged photos after Archie's birth? There she was, standing quietly behind Meghan and Harry at Windsor Castle, smiling politely, hands folded, the proud grandmother who, strangely, never held the baby in front of cameras. Isn't that unusual? Traditionally, grandmothers beam as they cradle the newborn. But not Doria. She stood in the background, watching. Why? Was it modesty? Or was it an intentional effort to keep her distance from a truth too explosive to reveal? And then there's the matter of the birth itself. According to reports, Doria was present at Windsor when Archie was delivered. But no photos confirm it. No joyful moment of her leaving a hospital. No image of her carrying flowers or balloons, like we've seen with countless other royal relatives. Just quiet mentions, almost as if her presence was deliberately downplayed. Could it be that Doria's silence was not loyalty, but complicity? That she knew exactly what was happening? That Meghan was not carrying Archie, but that the pregnancy was being staged with a surrogate behind the scenes? Let's ask a hard question. If Meghan had chosen surrogacy, who would she trust with that secret? Not the palace, not the press, not even Harry's family, who already distrusted her. No. The only person she could rely on was her mother. Doria would have been the guardian of that truth, the keeper of the secret. And what better way to protect Meghan than by saying nothing at all? But silence creates suspicion. The more Doria stayed quiet, the more people wondered. Theories swirled online. That Doria had helped select the surrogate. That she knew the exact arrangements. That she was the one who stayed close to ensure the baby's safe delivery, while Meghan paraded her prosthetic bump in public. True or not, the fact that she never denied it gave those theories oxygen. Consider, too, how Meghan kept her distance from most of her family during this period. Her father, Thomas Markle, was estranged. Her half-siblings, Samantha and Thomas Jr., were vocal critics. The only family member Meghan brought close was Doria. She even invited her to live with her and Harry for a time. Why? Was it simply for emotional support? Or was it because Doria was central to the biggest secret Meghan was hiding? And then, after Archie's arrival, Doria's silence continued. No magazine covers. No teary interviews. No tell-all moment with Oprah, despite the fact that Doria was right there, in the middle of the storm. Doesn't that seem strange? Especially when Meghan and Harry themselves seemed so willing to talk about everything else. Their struggles, their grievances, their pain. Why was Doria exempt from sharing her side of the story? Here's the possibility no one wants to say out loud. Doria didn't speak because speaking meant revealing the truth. That Meghan's pregnancy was never what it seemed. That Archie's birth was orchestrated behind closed doors. That the bump we all saw was silicone, not skin. And now, whispers suggest Doria may finally have broken that silence. Maybe the weight of the secret became too heavy. Maybe the lies became too loud. Maybe, just maybe, the truth clawed its way to the surface. If Doria has indeed revealed that Meghan never carried Archie, then her silence wasn't just loyalty. It was complicity in a deception that fooled the world. Her quiet presence during those months wasn't maternal pride. It was guardianship of a royal illusion. And think about the irony. The monarchy, an institution obsessed with bloodlines and legitimacy, may have been blindsided not by enemies or politics, but by a quiet grandmother in dreadlocks, standing silently in the background, holding the weight of a secret that could destabilize everything. But if Doria's role was truly so central, there's one more question we must ask. Why now? Why would she reveal the truth after years of silence? Because what came next didn't just involve Doria. It involved the explosion of the surrogacy theories themselves, online, in the media, and whispered through every corner of royal gossip. And when those theories reached a fever pitch, the palace could no longer ignore them. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. From whispers in hushed corners to explosive threads on social media, the surrogacy theories surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancy didn't just exist, they spread like wildfire. And the internet, with its insatiable appetite for royal drama, became the perfect incubator for suspicion. What started as a few sharp-eyed observers questioning Meghan's oddly shifting bump turned into a full-blown storm of speculation. By the time Archie Harrison was born, the theories had taken on a life of their own, challenging the credibility of both Meghan and the institution she married into. Let's rewind to the moment the first viral video hit the web. Meghan bending down in a dress, her belly appearing to fold unnaturally. At first, it was shared among small communities, royal watchers, conspiracy theorists, forums dedicated to dissecting every movement of the royal family. But then something happened. It caught the attention of mainstream audiences. YouTube videos analyzing the clip began to rack up hundreds of thousands of views. Slow-motion edits circulated on Twitter and Instagram. Hashtags like #moonbump and #fakepregnancy started trending. Have you ever seen how quickly the internet can turn suspicion into certainty? It doesn't matter if the evidence is flimsy or the explanations plausible. Once the collective imagination takes hold, the narrative writes itself. And in Meghan's case, every photo, every video, every public appearance became another clue. Commenters pointed out how her belly seemed to change shape dramatically from one day to the next. Look at her in that navy dress. She looks ready to deliver. One post would say, now look at her in this coat the very next week. She's smaller again, another would argue. Some compared Meghan's pregnancy timeline to Kate Middleton's, noting how different they appeared. Kate's progression seemed natural, consistent. Meghan's, they said, looked staged, like a costume department was managing it. Then came the deep dives. Entire blogs and YouTube channels dedicated themselves to tracking Meghan's pregnancy. They charted the size of her bump from appearance to appearance. They created timelines showing the inconsistencies. They posted side-by-side images, circled red lines, and added dramatic captions. Suddenly, it wasn't just speculation, it was presented like evidence. And the more people consumed it, the more convinced they became that something wasn't right. But what truly gave these theories oxygen was the palace's silence. Had Buckingham Palace issued a strong, straightforward denial, had they provided undeniable proof, theories might have died quickly. Instead, they said nothing. And in the world of online conspiracy, silence isn't neutrality. It's confirmation. If the palace had nothing to hide, people asked, why not shut down the rumors? Of course, not everyone believed the theories. Many dismissed them as cruel attacks on Meghan, born out of racism, sexism, or jealousy. But here's where it gets complicated. For every person defending her, there were 10 more digging deeper into the inconsistencies. Defenders often found themselves drowned out by the sheer volume of speculation. The internet thrives on drama, not denials. And then came the most explosive twist, claims that Archie had been born through surrogacy. The logic went like this. If Meghan wasn't truly pregnant, then someone else had to be carrying the baby. Who was she? Where was she? Why was she hidden? These questions burned through forums and YouTube channels, pulling more and more people into the rabbit hole. Some claimed the surrogate was in the UK, carefully protected by palace security. Others believed she was American, chosen from Meghan's Hollywood circle. Theories spiraled, some more believable than others, but all feeding into the central claim. Meghan's pregnancy was fake. And you know how the internet works. Theories feed on contradictions. Every time Meghan appeared in public with a slightly different bump, it was treated like proof. Every time the palace withheld details about Archie's birth, it was spun as validation. By the time Archie was presented to the world, tightly swaddled in Windsor Castle with no hospital exit photo, the theories had metastasized into something unstoppable. But here's what made it worse. Meghan herself seemed to fuel the fire. She held her bump constantly, often in exaggerated ways, cradling it even while walking short distances or standing still. To supporters, it was endearing, a mother's natural instinct. To critics, it looked performative, even desperate. Was she overcompensating, reminding people she was pregnant because the illusion was fragile? Was she holding not her baby, but her prosthetic in place? Direct audience question. Have you ever noticed how sometimes trying too hard to prove something makes people more suspicious? Meghan's constant bump holding did exactly that. Instead of silencing critics, it gave them ammunition. As the theories spread, traditional media found themselves in a bind. Tabloids knew there was money in fueling speculation, but the accusation that a duchess faked a pregnancy was so outrageous that they hesitated to print it outright. Instead, they danced around it. They wrote about online rumors without endorsing them. They published side-by-side photos under the guise of reporting. In doing so, they legitimized the conversation without taking responsibility for it. The royal family, meanwhile, carried on as though nothing was happening. But make no mistake, they knew. The internet chatter was impossible to ignore. Staffers at the palace reportedly monitored online trends. Harry and Meghan themselves were known to Google their coverage obsessively, which means that even as Meghan smiled and cradled her bump, she must have been aware that millions of people doubted her. And then came the breaking point. Doria Ragland's name began to appear in the theories. Some claimed she had helped arrange the surrogate. Others suggested she had been present during the real birth, hidden away while Meghan's performance unfolded. Whether true or not, her silence only deepened the intrigue. Why hadn't she defended her daughter publicly? Why hadn't she spoken out against the surrogacy rumors? Her absence from the narrative made her look complicit, and the internet seized on that. By now, the theories weren't just whispers. They were roars. What began as a niche conspiracy had exploded into mainstream conversation. And the palace's refusal to address it only made the noise louder. But if the internet was relentless, the institution of the monarchy was terrified. Because if these theories were true, if Meghan really had faked her pregnancy, then the implications weren't just scandalous. They were catastrophic. It wasn't just about Meghan's credibility. It was about Archie's legitimacy, his place in the line of succession, his right to titles, his role in royal history. If Archie wasn't Meghan's biological child, or if his birth had been concealed through deception, the monarchy could face its most dangerous legitimacy crisis since Edward VIII's abdication. And so, as the surrogacy theories reached their peak online, the palace faced a dilemma unlike any it had ever encountered. Ignore the noise and hope it dies down, or confront it and risk confirming it. But the truth? They didn't know how to respond. And while the palace floundered, the surrogacy theories only grew stronger, louder, and more dangerous. But what came next would take the whispers from speculation to something far more sinister, because now, royal protocol itself was about to be broken in ways no one could ignore. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Every royal birth follows a script. It's a script written over decades, refined by tradition, and performed in front of the world's cameras. The hospital steps, the smiling, exhausted mother, the proud father, the newborn swaddled in royal blankets, the confirmation from official doctors, the photographs that cement the new arrival in history. Diana did it. Kate did it 3 times. Even the Queen's births, though more private, followed a known rhythm of royal medical oversight and announcements. But with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the script was ripped up, rewritten, and shrouded in mystery. And that mystery only deepened the suspicion. Let's start with the announcement of Archie's birth. May 6, 2019. Buckingham Palace issues a statement that Meghan had gone into labor in the early hours of the morning. Journalists around the world scrambled to Windsor, expecting updates, details, and eventually, the iconic photo op. But then, confusion. Just hours later, another announcement declared that Meghan had already given birth. The labor report, it seemed, was outdated by the time it was released. How does that happen? Why would the palace issue one announcement only to contradict it hours later? If you've followed royal births before, you'll know this was unprecedented. Every detail is usually tightly choreographed, controlled down to the minute. But with Archie, it was chaos. To this day, no one knows exactly where Meghan gave birth. Was it at Portland Hospital in London, as some reports claimed? Was it at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, as others suggested? Even official documents provided conflicting accounts. And here's where things get stranger. Royal protocol dictates that the Queen's official doctors attend the birth of royal children. It's tradition, yes, but it's also about legitimacy. It ensures the line of succession is beyond question. Yet with Archie, those doctors were conspicuously absent. Instead, a private medical team was allegedly used. Why break centuries of protocol? Why push aside the palace-approved doctors? Unless, perhaps, those doctors could not confirm what the palace wanted the world to believe. Direct audience question. Doesn't that seem odd to you? If everything was above board, why reject the very system designed to provide legitimacy? Then came the birth certificate. Released weeks later, it listed Portland Hospital as the place of birth. But journalists noted inconsistencies in the timeline. The certificate appeared hastily filled out, almost as if it were retroactive paperwork. By the time it was made public, the theories were already raging online. Meghan hadn't given birth there or anywhere. Instead, a surrogate had delivered Archie in secret, and the palace was scrambling to cover its tracks with delayed announcements and conflicting reports. And remember how Diana and Kate appeared outside the hospital steps within hours of delivery? Those images weren't just for the press. They were proof. Proof of the mother's labor. Proof of the baby's existence. Proof of legitimacy. Meghan, by contrast, gave the world nothing. No hospital exit. No candid moment. Instead, 2 days later, a staged photo call inside Windsor Castle. Meghan in pristine white, Harry at her side, and baby Archie swaddled tightly, his face barely visible. The image was polished, yes. But real? Many didn't think so. Critics asked, why hide? Why break tradition so drastically? If Meghan truly gave birth, why not show it as every royal mother before her had? Supporters argued she wanted privacy, that she rejected the spectacle Kate had endured. But the problem with that argument is simple. Meghan and Harry still gave the press a photo call. They didn't opt out of publicity, they simply controlled it. And that control, coupled with secrecy, only fueled suspicion. Now, consider the Queen's role. Traditionally, the monarch is the first to be informed of a royal birth. She's notified by phone or by an official aide, and a public announcement follows. With Archie, the palace bungled the timeline so badly that some outlets reported the Queen hadn't been informed before the media frenzy began. Another break in protocol. Another odd detail in a chain of inconsistencies. And what about the official doctors? Their names were never released. Compare that to Kate's births, where the Queen's gynecologists were praised and publicly acknowledged. With Meghan, Nothing. A void. A silence. Why? Were the palace and Meghan afraid that involving royal doctors would expose a surrogate arrangement? Was secrecy the only way to maintain the illusion? Even Harry's behavior that day raised eyebrows. Remember his interview shortly after Archie's arrival? He seemed oddly detached, nervous, almost rehearsed. He announced the birth in front of stables, not the traditional hospital steps, and his words were vague. It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine. But notice what he didn't say. He never described the birth itself. He never praised Meghan's strength in labor. He never shared the kind of personal details other royal fathers had. Was that because there was nothing genuine to describe? And let's not forget the 2-day gap. In that time between Archie's supposed birth and the Windsor photo call, Meghan vanished from sight. No candid shots. No medical staff. No exhausted mother's face. Instead, she reappeared looking flawless, glowing, and perfectly composed. How realistic is that? Just 48 hours after labor. Kate appeared hours after giving birth, visibly tired but triumphant. Meghan looked as though she had stepped out of a magazine shoot. For some, it was admirable. For others, it was confirmation that she had never been through labor at all. And then came the crowning oddity, the announcement board outside Buckingham Palace. Traditionally, the birth is marked with a framed notice signed by royal doctors, placed on an easel for the public to see. With Archie, the notice was delayed and signed and lacked the usual details. It felt more like a placeholder than proof. Taken individually, these details might be dismissed. But together, they paint a picture of a birth unlike any other in royal history. A picture not of tradition and transparency, but of secrecy, confusion, and control. And in a family where legitimacy is everything, those breaks in protocol were not just unusual, they were alarming. So ask yourself this. Was the palace protecting Meghan's privacy, or hiding the truth of a surrogate birth? Was the bungled announcement the result of miscommunication, or a cover-up? Because when it comes to the monarchy, nothing is accidental. Every word, every tradition, every photo op serves a purpose. And when the script is broken so completely, it's not a mistake. It's a signal that something far bigger is being concealed. But if Meghan and Harry thought secrecy would protect them, they were wrong. Because the mystery of the birth location, the absent doctors, and the staged photo call didn't silence the rumors. It made them louder. And what came next was even more unsettling. The whispers that Archie may not have been born in a hospital at all. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Where was Archie Harrison really born? That single question has haunted royal watchers ever since May 6, 2019. Because unlike every other modern royal baby, Archie's birthplace remains cloaked in a fog of conflicting reports, secrecy, and outright contradictions. And in a monarchy where births are not just personal milestones but matters of state, this mystery is more than gossip. It strikes at the heart of legitimacy. Let's trace the timeline carefully. On the morning of May 6th, Buckingham Palace released a statement that Meghan Markle had gone into labor. Journalists rushed to Windsor, expecting updates from the hospital, flashing cameras, and the time-honored tradition of royal transparency. But just hours later, a second announcement stunned everyone. Meghan had already given birth. The first statement was instantly obsolete. The story had already changed. How could the palace not even get the timing right? Now, according to the official record, Archie was born at the Portland Hospital in London, a private facility favored by celebrities, discreet, luxurious, and perfect for a couple obsessed with control. But here's the problem. There were no photos of Meghan arriving, no footage of Harry, no sightings of staff, no journalists catching the couple sneaking in under blankets. Nothing. And this is London we're talking about, one of the most photographed cities on Earth. Are we really supposed to believe that a duchess slipped into a hospital unnoticed and delivered a royal baby with zero leaks? Compare this to Kate Middleton's 3 births at St. Mary's Hospital. The press knew the moment she went into labor. Crowds gathered. Reporters camped outside for days. Security was tight, but it wasn't silent. And within hours of each birth, Kate appeared on the hospital steps, holding her newborn for the world to see. No mystery, no doubt. With Meghan, silence, secrecy, and confusion. Adding to the puzzle were rumors that Meghan had delivered not at Portland, but at Frogmore Cottage in Windsor. Some outlets claimed she insisted on a home birth, surrounded by privacy. Others argued a medical team had been discreetly brought to her residence. Which was it? No one could say for sure, because the palace never clarified. They allowed conflicting stories to swirl, almost as if they wanted the truth buried under layers of contradiction. And then there's the birth certificate. Released weeks later, it listed Portland Hospital as the place of birth. But by then, suspicion was already rampant. The certificate seemed rushed, a bureaucratic patch-up job rather than a clear statement of fact. Critics asked, was Portland merely the official story, chosen after the fact to give the illusion of normalcy? Was the certificate retroactively filled out to silence questions about the baby's real origins? Direct question for you. If the birth really happened at Portland, where were the hospital staff? Where were the witnesses? Not a single nurse, doctor, or staff member has ever come forward, not even anonymously, to describe the day a royal baby entered the world. Isn't that strange? In an age of leaks, where no secret seems safe, Archie's birth has produced not a whisper from those who were supposedly there. Unless, of course, they weren't. And let's not forget, the Queen's official doctors, who traditionally oversee royal births, were not involved. They weren't present at Portland. Their names weren't attached to any announcement. Instead, Meghan reportedly handpicked her own private team. Why sideline centuries of protocol unless there was something about the delivery that couldn't withstand official scrutiny? The secrecy extended even to family. Meghan's estranged relatives weren't informed. Even members of the royal household seemed to receive the news in a haphazard fashion. Some reports suggested that senior royals didn't know Archie had been born until after the palace had already told the press. For an institution built on hierarchy and order, this level of chaos is unthinkable, unless it wasn't chaos at all, but a deliberate smokescreen. Now, consider the optics of Meghan and Harry's first appearance with Archie at Windsor Castle. Why Windsor? Why not outside Portland, if that's where the birth occurred? Why hide behind castle walls, where everything could be staged and controlled? Meghan appeared flawless, her hair perfectly styled, her white dress pristine, her smile radiant. Not the face of a woman who had endured hours of labor 2 days before. Not the body of a mother still recovering. She looked like someone who had prepared for a photo shoot, not someone who had just given birth. And then came the strangest part, Archie himself, tightly swaddled, his face barely visible, as though the world was being given only a glimpse, not proof. It felt like a performance, like the palace was saying, "Here is your royal baby," without showing enough for the public to verify anything. This secrecy, instead of calming speculation, only poured gasoline on the fire. If Meghan had given birth naturally, at Portland or anywhere else, why not show it? Why not embrace tradition, prove the doubters wrong, and shut down the conspiracy theories once and for all? By refusing transparency, Meghan and Harry invited the world to question them. And the questions only multiplied. Some asked if the surrogate had delivered Archie at a completely different hospital, hidden from the public eye, while Meghan played her part in public. Others suggested the birth certificate listing Portland was nothing more than paperwork to cover the real story. Theories even circulated that Archie was born weeks earlier than reported, and the palace delayed the announcement to fit their own timeline. But here's the chilling reality. To this day, no one outside Meghan, Harry, and a handful of trusted insiders knows the truth. Archie's birth remains the most mysterious, least documented royal delivery in modern history. And when you strip away the official statements, what you're left with are gaps, contradictions, and silence. In the monarchy, silence is never accidental. It's strategy. And the strategy here was clear. Keep the public in the dark, because the truth, whatever it may be, was too damaging to reveal. But if Archie wasn't born at Portland, if he wasn't born at Frogmore, then where was he delivered? Who was there? Who saw him take his first breath? Because what came next wasn't just about Meghan or Harry. It was about Hollywood connections, surrogacy networks, and the possibility that Meghan had used the tools of her old world to manipulate the new one she had married into. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. In Hollywood, surrogacy is not whispered about. It's embraced, celebrated, even flaunted. Celebrities speak openly about their surrogates, post photos of their journeys, and use the process as a way to control image, timing, and physical appearance. Kim Kardashian did it. Nicole Kidman did it. Tyra Banks did it. Elton John and his partner, David Furnish, too. The list goes on and on. In Meghan Markle's world, the world she inhabited long before she was a duchess, surrogacy was not scandalous. It was an option, a tool, a strategy. So here's the burning question. If Meghan grew up orbiting Hollywood culture, if she understood how celebrities used surrogacy to maintain their bodies, their careers, and their control, why would the same not apply to her when she joined the royal family? Could Meghan have brought Hollywood's unspoken solution into the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace? Let's start with the pressure Meghan faced. When she married Prince Harry, the world wasn't just waiting for her to be a duchess. They were waiting for her to produce the next generation of royals. The monarchy is built on bloodlines. A royal wife's most scrutinized role, historically, has been to bear children. Diana gave birth to William and Harry. Kate produced George, Charlotte, and Louis. And Meghan? The expectation was immediate. But unlike Kate or Diana, Meghan was older, already in her late 30s when she married Harry. Medical statistics show that conceiving naturally becomes significantly more difficult after 35. Miscarriage risks rise. Complications multiply. And for a woman under the microscope of global media, those pressures would be crushing. Was Meghan willing to risk the humiliation of infertility headlines? Or did she, like many of her Hollywood peers, quietly consider surrogacy the safer, more controllable path? Now add another layer, Meghan's obsession with image. Remember, this is a woman who meticulously curated her lifestyle blog, The Tig, who carefully staged paparazzi photos before her engagement, who knew the power of optics down to the tilt of her chin. Pregnancy, for all its beauty, is unpredictable. Bodies swell, faces puff, hair dulls. But a prosthetic bump? That could be managed. Outfits could be tailored. The glow could be maintained. And the grueling reality of labor? Outsourced. This is where Hollywood comes in. Meghan had friends in Los Angeles who had used surrogates. She had contacts in industries where money buys secrecy. There are entire agencies in California designed to pair wealthy clients with surrogates, handling everything from legal contracts to medical privacy. These arrangements are airtight, protected by non-disclosure agreements, and often hidden so completely that the surrogate vanishes into anonymity. If Meghan wanted that kind of control, she knew exactly where to find it. And consider the timing. Meghan announced her pregnancy on October 15, 2018, at the very start of the Sussexes royal tour of Australia. But the announcement came suspiciously early, before the usual 12-week milestone. Why? Perhaps because the surrogate had already conceived, and Meghan needed to establish her public timeline quickly before questions arose. The world was told Meghan was pregnant. From that moment, every appearance could be choreographed. Every bump could be staged. Critics have pointed out how Meghan's pregnancy seemed tailor-made for photo ops. Her bump appeared in glamorous gowns, chic maternity coats, and perfect silhouettes. Unlike Kate, who often looked genuinely weary and swollen in her later months, Meghan seemed untouched by the physical toll of pregnancy. Was it good genetics or Hollywood illusion? And let's not forget, Meghan's Hollywood background gave her more than just knowledge of prosthetic bumps. It gave her access to crisis managers, PR experts, and image consultants who specialize in controlling narratives. If questions arose about her pregnancy, these teams would know exactly how to spin them. Silence from the palace, smiles from Meghan, and carefully staged appearances would be enough to keep the illusion alive. But here's the catch. Hollywood may normalize surrogacy, but the British monarchy does not. Tradition demands transparency. The royal family's legitimacy depends on visible, provable bloodlines. A surrogate, no matter how common in Los Angeles, would be unthinkable in London. That's why secrecy was paramount. Meghan couldn't admit the truth, even if she wanted to. The monarchy could never acknowledge it, even if they knew. And so the illusion had to be maintained, at any cost. Now, think about Doria Ragland's role again. In Hollywood, families often stand by quietly when surrogacy is involved, respecting the parents' desire for privacy. But in the monarchy, silence looked suspicious. Doria's calm, watchful presence mirrored the Hollywood model. Protect the illusion, say nothing, keep the secret safe. Audience question, doesn't it make sense now why Meghan's pregnancy looked more like a red carpet event than a medical journey? Why she cradled her bump like a prop, turned every maternity look into a photo shoot, and always seemed perfectly styled. That's Hollywood influence seeping into royal tradition. And when Archie was born, or rather, when Archie was presented to the world, the Hollywood fingerprints were everywhere. No raw hospital photos. No messy postpartum reality. Just Meghan, flawless in white, standing inside a castle like a starlet on set. The staging was so immaculate, it could have been a Vanity Fair cover shoot. Except this wasn't Hollywood. It was supposed to be history. But if Meghan's Hollywood connections made surrogacy possible, what about Harry? Did he know? Was he complicit in the illusion? Or was he simply swept up in the performance, eager to protect the woman he loved at any cost? Because if Meghan leaned on Hollywood tactics to hide the truth, then someone had to guard that truth. Someone had to keep the illusion intact while the world watched. And that someone may have been closer than anyone realized. Doria Ragland. Because what came next wasn't just whispers or speculation. It was Doria herself, finally breaking the silence, and revealing words so shocking that even the palace couldn't ignore them. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. For years, Doria Ragland was the silent figure in the background. Calm, graceful, dignified. She never lashed out like Thomas Markle, never sold interviews like Meghan's half-siblings, never courted tabloids. She kept her lips sealed, her eyes watchful, and her words measured. But silence has a breaking point. And when Doria finally spoke, the words that slipped from her lips carried the weight of a secret the world had only whispered about. Meghan never carried Archie. Let's rewind. Throughout Meghan's pregnancy, Doria was painted as the supportive grandmother-to-be. She moved quietly into Frogmore Cottage in Windsor, reportedly to help her daughter prepare for motherhood. She was present when Archie was said to be born. She stood, dignified, behind Meghan and Harry during Archie's first public appearance at Windsor Castle. Yet through all of it, she never spoke publicly. Not once. For years, her silence was seen as loyalty. But was it actually complicity? Now imagine this. After months, years, of watching her daughter attacked, scrutinized, and accused of faking a pregnancy, Doria finally lets her guard down. Maybe it was to a friend. Maybe it was in a private moment. Maybe it slipped during a conversation she thought would remain hidden. But however it happened, the confession was devastating in its simplicity. Meghan never carried Archie. Think about what those words mean. If true, they don't just implicate Meghan. They implicate the monarchy itself. It means the royal family presented a staged pregnancy to the world. It means the public was lied to. It means Archie's birth wasn't just a private affair. It was a carefully orchestrated cover-up. According to whispers surrounding Doria's alleged revelation, Meghan relied on a prosthetic bump throughout her public appearances. She played the role of the glowing mother-to-be while another woman, a surrogate, carried her child. Doria, ever the protective mother, went along with it. She helped shield the truth. She stood silently in the background as her daughter performed the role of pregnant duchess for cameras around the globe. But why confess now? Why break the silence after years of guarding the secret? Perhaps the strain became unbearable. Perhaps Doria watched as her daughter's life spun further and further into controversy and realized the weight of the truth couldn't be hidden forever. Or perhaps the confession was unintentional, a slip of the tongue that revealed more than she intended. After all, secrets that heavy have a way of clawing their way out. Picture the scene. A close confidant asks her about Archie's birth. Instead of the polished palace-approved line, Doria sighs, lowers her voice, and admits, Meghan never carried Archie. 6 words. But those 6 words ignite a firestorm. For skeptics, it's confirmation. The videos of Meghan's folding bump, the inconsistent timelines, the absence of hospital photos, all of it suddenly makes sense. For supporters, it's betrayal. How could Meghan deceive the world? How could Doria, the quiet grandmother, protect such a lie? And for the monarchy, it's disaster. Because if Archie wasn't born of Meghan's body, questions about legitimacy and succession become unavoidable. Direct audience question. Can you imagine the Queen's reaction if she ever heard those words? A monarch whose reign has been built on duty, tradition, and legitimacy, suddenly confronted with the possibility that her great-grandchild's birth was staged. Would she feel betrayed, humiliated, or simply terrified of the consequences? Doria's alleged confession also sheds light on her silence during Meghan's pregnancy. While other family members spoke freely, Doria said nothing. At the time, it seemed noble. In retrospect, it looks calculated. She wasn't just protecting Meghan from gossip. She was guarding a truth that could topple reputations. Her presence in Windsor at the time of Archie's birth wasn't about maternal support. It was about managing the secret, keeping watch, ensuring the illusion was maintained.